Tune in to the Cheryl Taylor Radio Show. The Empress Cheryl Taylor and the #1 DJ in the mix, DJ Superman Spin. For the best in Caribbean music. Hip hop music.
Turn this TV off. Turn this TV off.
Y'all gon' make me lose my mind. Up in here. Y'all gon' make me go all out. Up in here.
And R&B music.
In this paradigm, don't believe in paradise. This must be when hell is like this. Got to be more.
Tune in for the Cheryl Taylor Show, Tuesdays 1 to 3 p.m. on NewEraTT Radio, Net Radio.
You not ready? You feel there's a hard man. You not ready? Well, I don't want no glad man. You not ready? Don't fall off on the side. No. You see me whining, and you think you can handle me. You not ready? Walk to your rude boy. Don't fall off on the side. When you ride on the saddle, and I hope you can handle me right. Come on and jiggle little boy and a tremble. You better don't fall off on the side. You better take your time when it comes to my backside. But what you doing? Cause it's tickling inside. If you can't do the work, you better leave the job side. Don't waste my time if you can't do the thing right. All I need is a little pleasing. But what you doing that not helping. Watch the ride, you can get some bruise and then you can't stand up in the morning. When you ride on the saddle, and I hope you can handle the ride. Come on and jiggle little boy and a tremble. You better don't fall off on the side. jiggle little boy and a tremble. You better don't fall off on the side. When you ride on the saddle, and I hope you can handle the ride. Come on, jiggle little boy and a tremble. You better don't fall off on the side. Beware of the backside. Watch the ride. Keep it there on the divide. Watch the ride. Use the rhythm as the guide. Watch the ride. Don't fall off on the side. Man, it's plenty force applied. Watch the ride. Take it sharp, don't take it wide. Watch the ride. If you slip, you're going to slide. Watch the ride. Don't fall off on the side. You not ready. You not ready, ready, ready. You not ready. You not ready yet. You not ready. You not ready. You not ready. Don't fall off on the side. You not ready. You not ready, ready, ready. You not ready. You not ready yet. You not ready. You not ready, ready. Don't fall off on the side. When you ride on the saddle,
You ain't gonna school for properly yet. And it ain't like you have a different type of ambition. Catch yourself. Every day you get up as a young lady, all you studying in the school clothes is to chase man. Just sit down in front seat all day, all evening, breaking beach like Moses. One tell you, some girl chase man cause of them automobile. The only one and cause of them car. Whoa, all them want is just beep, beep, beep. As them traveling near and far. What them want, them only chase man cause of automobile. Them one man because of them car. Whoa, all them want is just beep, beep, beep. As them traveling near and far. What them want, beep, 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 beep. Only one beep, 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 beep. Chase them in the pile and heat. What them want, beep, 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 beep. Hey, hey, beep, 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 beep. Chase them in the pile and heat. Imagine this, the way I see some girl behave for the front seat. Two good friends just start grudge for the front seat. One bushy head, the next one lost the front teeth. Just for the front seat, yes, for the front seat. Some reputation get crushed for the front seat. Like Lindsay Lohan, them catch fire crushed for the front seat. Why you going through so much for the front seat? Motor car don't carry one seat. You only want beep, 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 beep. Only one beep, 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 beep. Chase them in the pile and heat. What them want? Beep, 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 beep. Them no one no phone, them no one no pay at that beep. Only car in the pile and heat. Alright, behavioral pattern, I beg that cease. Half a brethren named Steve, smooth like grease. Them girl never talking to fellas like these, but the table turn round when they buy Mercedes. She want to go to corner, so she beg that please. If you see she getting on, she hands and knees. She don't even care if this boy got disease. He give her his piece, she give him her piece. She rush her front seat and start cough and wheeze. That front seat make she catch the HIV. So the beep, 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 beep. Only one beep, 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 beep. Only one to clean up by.
Carnival in the air, pretty girls everywhere. Take a wine by the truck. Hey, get ready to juke, juke, juke. Get ready to juke, juke, juke. I'm ready to walk. I want to walk. I'm feeling to walk. I want to walk inside of the van. We walking. I want to pass it soaking wet.
news you need, the clarity you deserve. Local, regional, global. This is Net Radio News Now.
Taking a look at stories in the news now. Hours after Prime Minister Stuart Young announced that the U.S. government has revoked the licenses previously granted for both the Dragon and Mannequin Coquina cross-border gas deals, he attempted to reinstill confidence in the business community regarding TNT's future. The message is, despite what you're hearing, all of our eggs of TNT are not in the Dragon basket, he said, speaking at the TTMA's leadership discussion and networking event on April 9th at Hyatt Regency. We will continue to traverse the waters and we will continue to fight for TNT. He encouraged manufacturers and business owners at the event to filter through the noise in their endeavors going forward. Young also lamented that some people were celebrating the announcement of the licenses cancellations amongst unfortunate media headlines. It still shocks me still that there are actually people who call themselves citizens of TNT and they believe in TNT is what they say, but they are rejoicing in another setback in what we've done with Dragon. He pointed out the past hurdles that the government faced in the deals. He said in 2018 the government negotiated a commercial term sheet, but the rise of sanctions in 2019 stopped any progress. People were rejoicing. Those aren't the people who want the best. But we didn't give up. By 2022 we engaged with decision makers in Washington. By 2023, shocking many, including many of the major oil and gas players around the world who we were trying to achieve the same thing we did, we got the full set of clearances from the US government with OFACs. He said the granting of licenses to TNT for the production and export of gas out of Venezuela was the first of its kind in history. The opposition United National Congress, UNC, claimed vindication after years of warning the PNM government against getting in bed with the Maduro administration on energy deals. The revocation of licenses by the U.S. for the Dragon Gas and Coquina Mannequin fields has, according to the UNC, left former Prime Minister Keith Rowley and current Prime Minister Stuart Young's cuckoo cooked. UNC's Tabakeith candidate Sean Sobers and Caroni Central candidate David Lee made the statements at Tuesday's UNC meeting in Marabella. Sobers said the UNC was not celebrating the Dragon Gas project's demise. You can find no clip of a UNC member that ever said we had a problem with Dragon Gas. What we said is we had a problem with Maduro, dealing with the Venezuelan administration, and that it would be a geopolitical nightmare to place TNT's future in one basket. He pointed out that both Democratic and Republican U.S. governments had targeted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Economists have described the recent news that the U.S. government has revoked Trinidad and Tobago's OFAC licenses as unfortunate but not unexpected, minutes after the Prime Minister announced it on April 8. Stuart Young told reporters at Whitehall in Port of Spain the U.S. government had informed him in a letter that OFAC licenses, which gave TNT permission to operate in the Mannequin Coquina gas field and the more well-known Dragon field, were revoked. Gregory McGuire said this puts TNT in a dire position, not just in the short-medium term. The fact is we are at a crisis point in TNT. The crisis is not just in 2 years. It is a very heavy existential crisis in terms of the industries that we have here. If we don't find gas, then the economy is going to certainly fold up. It is going to decline. As you know, it is the oil and gas industry that keeps the country afloat. It is a very serious situation. We may be surprised with someone in their exploration and so on. If God is a Trini and he smiles on us, we may come up with 2 to 3 trillion cubic feet, TCF. Valmiki Arjun said the Dragon field in particular was pegged to serve as a catalyst for other cross-border gas projects, which would have bolstered LNG and downstream exports such as methanol and ammonia. There are significant reserves at the TNT Venezuelan maritime border, from the Gulf of Paria to the Columbus Channel, with strong potential for new discoveries, he said. Venezuela is not a gas-based economy despite having the 9th largest reserves globally, nor do they have the infrastructure and financing to monetize this gas. He said the fact that Venezuela had no intention to use the gas presented potential for TNT to develop those fields. At its peak, Sucre is expected to deliver around 45,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day, about 250 MSCF/d. However, the Dragon field, according to Arjun, contained about 4.2 TCF, and could have supplied up to 350 MMSCF/d at its peak production. In the last decade, natural gas production fell by 38% due to maturing reservoirs, project delays and slower than expected development of existing fields, Arjun said. Tobago House of Assembly, THA, Deputy Chief Secretary Dr. Faith Brebner has been successful in her lawsuit against the state over a police search warrant obtained as part of an alleged fraud probe into her and other THA members. Justice Frank Seepersad ruled in Brebner's favor on April 9. The judge presided over Brebner's judicial review claim against Erla Harewood Christopher, as police commissioner at the time and magistracy registrar Jameel Watch, who issued the warrant. Although dismissing the case against the commissioner, Seepersad said the registrar's decision to issue the warrant was flawed, defective and not based on reasonable ground that it could have yielded evidence against Brebner. Given that the claimant was at the material time an elected official, the second defendant simply had no information before him which could have reasonably led him to form the belief that the execution of the search warrant could have yielded material evidence or relevant information which was capable of establishing that she was hired by the THA with the use of state funds as part of a propaganda machinery, or that she, in the capacity as a THA employee, was likely involved in a conspiracy to defraud the state, the judge said. Brebner filed a judicial review claim in January 2024, challenging the validity of the warrant obtained by WPC Weaverali. According to her lawsuit, on July 17, 2023, a warrant was served on her at her home at 5:35 a.m. The application said the warrant contained an allegation that she was suspected of committing a conspiracy to defraud the state. The application further said the conspiracy disclosed by the warrant, referred to as the Windward Warrant, allegedly disclosed that the Assembly had hired Brebner from November 2021 to the present and paid her state funds, for the sole purpose of carrying on an alleged propaganda machinery. Her lawsuit asked for the warrant to be quashed, which the judge granted. Brebner contended the Windward Warrant was one of multiple warrants issued against members of the THA and people connected to the Assembly as part of an investigation which was unavoidably colored in politics. Facing a global market meltdown, President Donald Trump on Wednesday abruptly backed down on his tariffs on most nations for 90 days but raised his tax rate on Chinese imports to 125%. The S&P 500 was up 7.8% in afternoon trading. It had been down earlier in the morning amid worries about Trump's trade war and whether it would cause a recession, as economists fear. But it spiked immediately after Trump sent the social media posting that investors have been waiting for. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 2,476 points, or 6.6%, as of 1:35 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Nasdaq Composite was 9% higher. And that's news at this time.
That was news now. Stay informed with New Era TT Radio.
Bringing you full discussions, the hottest topics, and some tracks to keep you moving. The Drive Time Exchange on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
Down in Shangaramas, big convention. They wanted to find suggestions to improve our production. Thousands of people were down there that time, but I just believe they went down there for old talk and line. If you don't believe the crew, so well, please don't doubt him at all. Trinidad and Tobago is the most productive country in the whole world. You may think I'm lying, but listen to me, and you'll hear some famous products we're producing recently. We produce over $50 billion in this country in 7 years. Then produce a one-track economy that collapse and leave us in tears. Then produce some corrupted crooks and scams that take all the money and gone. Well, tell me who in the world will beat us in this kind of production?
All right, everybody, and of course, welcome inside of the Drive Time Exchange. And of course, you're listening to New Era TT Radio, Net Radio. All right, and it's a real pleasure to have you this afternoon. And it's equally a great pleasure to have none other than our host, Tony Fraser, is on the inside. So, Tony, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon to you, Sir Charles. How is life?
I complain, but I won't.
Yeah. I could imagine you're putting in a 24/7 on this new radio station.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Support for Sir Charles on this new venture, the New Era Radio Trinidad and Tobago, a venture by a single man who's attempting to create some possibilities into the future.
And we are going to.
Of course, a few of us here are attempting to support him in that effort. Right, Sir Charles?
Definitely. And we will get there.
All right. Wonderful. So let's open this afternoon by thanking the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, Ramesh Ramdeen, not a stranger to such programs. Welcome to the program, Ramesh.
Unmute your mic.
Me? Maybe your microphone is not on.
Check your mic.
I just unmuted. Yes, I'm on now.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony, for having me here.
Right. And I must say, in addition to some of the other things that are happening, I was attracted to this spread. I don't know if viewers can see it, of the TTMA. This was before its meeting, which was what? Yesterday. Its annual general meeting, I think. Ramesh can explain the details of that. But, I was attracted also to a headline in today's Guardian that the TTMA boss, the newly elected boss, who we're going to have on in a moment, we have a number of people from the manufacturing sector. We're going to take them bit by bit so that each person has an opportunity to say his or her piece. And the attraction of the headline is the TTMA boss, we will take up the slack of the energy sector. That's quite a mouthful, quite a task to take up on. It's happening in this point in time when, as everybody knows in Trinidad and Tobago, the Dragon deal has been cancelled by the President of the United States of America. It's not something that we can easily do something about, notwithstanding some boasts coming from politicians, but politicians are not a breed of people. We are not dealing with them here. We are talking about the manufacturing sector, which has long been, Ramesh, and people like yourself have written about it, articulated, analyzed it, that there needs to be a non-oil manufacturing sector to take up some of the slack, as the TTMA president has said. We can't continue depending on a one-horse stream of income. Of course, we know, and Ramesh, being an economist, will know that Caribbean economies were born in sugar and other agricultural products, and they were created not to serve the countries in the region, but rather to serve the metropole. And therefore, for our historical past and even in the present, we have been raw material producers, semi-finished goods at times, sending them to the metropole and getting very little from it, while the metropole makes all of the value-added revenue from it. So that is the context in which the manufacturing, the non-oil manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed throughout the Caribbean, and I'm sure that Ramesh is going to tell us about a CARICOM effort in all of this. So Ramesh, give us a perspective on what the president is saying and the capacity and capability of the local sector to meet some of those very ambitious goals.
But thank you, Tony. Thank you for that introduction. Let me start by saying that, any shortfall in the energy sector is a big hole to fill. We need to be realistic. Trinidad and Tobago was once an oil economy. We now a gas economy. And the contribution of the fossil fuel sector, the energy sector into Trinidad and Tobago is significant. Any significant shortfall there, it's going to be a challenge to fill. If you recall, Tony, and I'm sure that you're very aware of it, in the days of the 1980s, 86, that period there, when we had some real challenges having to go to the IMF and that kind of thing, the sector that immediately carried the economy forward was the non-energy sector. We carried the economy forward there. We were able to I wouldn't say totally replace the shortcomings at that time, but we were able to at least maintain some level of stability, if not growth, some level of stability that we experienced before the challenges of the 1980 to 86 period. What we believe is that the non-energy manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago will continue to be a major contributor to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, both in terms of the GDP and employment. We're the second largest employer of people after the government in Trinidad. A lot of people don't realize that. Although the energy sector produces a lot of the revenue, the manufacturing sector produces a lot of the employment capabilities and efficiencies.
And why is that? Tell our listeners why is that so?
Because you need much more people to be working in factories. You need much more people. It's more integrated. You know, you're talking about drivers, you're talking about forklift, loaders, logistics, shipping. So outside of manufacturing itself, there's a lot more need for people to be involved in the production process from start to finish. The entire distribution chain.
Right. And while the energy sector is highly technological and mechanized.
Exactly, correct. Yes. I should add that part to it. Yes,
so many employees to have the thing going.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as you know, people would argue there was too much people employed in that sector that resulted in what happened in that sector.
Yeah.
So the manufacturing sector over the last, coming out of COVID, has been consistently growing. And the impetus of that came from an initiative that the TTMA had in 2019, 2020, when we sought to double export. We wanted to increase our export earning capacity. And the main reason for that, we realized that we needed to earn our own foreign exchange. So foreign exchange continued to be a big problem for us in the country, Tony. There's no two ways about that. But what I can tell you, the manufacturing sector are not the ones who are feeling most of the crunch. A lot of businesses are feeling the crunch, but not so much the manufacturing sector. Because in theory, in general, once you export in 30% of what you're producing, you become more or less a net earner of foreign exchange. Whether all that
Ramesh, what's that figure you called there? I missed it.
30% of what you manufacture. 30, yes. Right. So once you export in roughly between 30 and 35%, you become a net earner generally for the most part of foreign exchange. And a lot of the bigger players, I mean, most if not all the bigger players, the Associated Brands, the Ansa Macal, the TCL, the Bermudas Group, the Harco, all the big players are over that threshold. The Nestle, you name them, they're over that threshold. The smaller players are the ones who have some challenges. Unfortunately for the TTMA, coming out of the COVID, the recovery group that was put together, we made a recommendation to the government of the day, and we got support for the recommendation to create an FX facility at Exim Bank that would allow SMEs that belong to the TTM and belong to Trinidad and Tobago. But if you belong to the TTM, it was easier because we handheld them through the process to get foreign exchange, to buy the raw material for machinery and input into manufacturing. And that would have helped them tremendously. And the result of all those efforts, coupled with the fact that our TIC, we brought buyers into Trinidad, we engaged in a number of inward missions. And my president would have spoken to the fact that between 2022, when the economy opened back up, and today, we had over close to 100 trade missions. We just came back from a trade mission on the sea where we stopped at 6 countries in the region. And each time we stop at these countries, we are able to generate opportunities for manufacturing, participating in the process. Yeah. I must say, we stop in St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. Martin, Barbados. Let me touch a little bit on Puerto Rico, Tony. Yeah. Puerto Rico is an exceptionally good market. Right. We had some really good discussion. Those who participated in that trade mission from the food and beverage sector, we met people in Puerto Rico at a supermarket chain that has 51 supermarkets. And these people didn't know about the quality, the standard of the products that we produce in Trinidad and Tobago. When they saw that, the guy immediately booked a ticket to come in 2 weeks' time to Trinidad and visit the wider manufacturers in Trinidad and Tobago from the food and beverage sector. He's coming to TIC, for example, to meet other players. So I'm saying all this to say, to answer the question and contextualize the conversation my president was having, that the manufacturing sector we cannot replace the losses of the energy sector. Let's be real about that. But we could try our best to
Sorry,
fill the
sorry,
gap.
Ramesh, give our listeners an appreciation of the figures. Is that contributed by the energy sector to the national product? And of course, what is contributed by the manufacturing sector?
So in terms of our export sales, it all depends on which figures that you look at, because what we have done at the TTMA, and I need to be specific to this, is that we have discounted a number of items, although it fall under the category of non-energy manufacturing. So ammonia, urea, methanol, scrap iron, re-exports, pig iron, on all those things, it's non-energy manufacturing. In some instances, it can be downstream derivative. So if you add all that, the non-energy manufacturing sector represents close to about $20 billion, right? But we have disaggregated and take out a lot of those downstream derivative, which is a lot. And our exports that belong to the membership of the TTMA at this point in time is just about $7 billion. Now, the loss in the energy sector could run up to, depends on how much loss and what we do have and how much gas is exhausted and that kind of thing. The calculation could be up to about $10 billion, $20 billion, depending on, we don't know what kind of fines we're going to have in the energy sector. We don't know if we're going to lose further capacity in oil production. We don't know the volatility in the prices of oil and gas. So all those things are factors that, we don't have control over. We are price takers. We are not price setters on the market.
Right. The Minister of Finance in his 24 budget statement estimated the figure that is from the energy sector at about 16 to 17 billion dollars, around that general kind of area.
Yeah.
Before I go on, I see Vida Gobin is also locked in here. You're there, Vida?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Mr. Fraser, and of course to Ramesh, who's always working so hard for us here at TTMA, the members, and we are so very thankful. Of course, good afternoon to our new president, Mr. Dale Parson, who I have the pleasure of knowing since my teenage years. Hey, I'm not too old, but
which wasn't too long ago, right?
Which was not too long ago. And I must say, having known him that long, if he tells you he's going to do something, you better wait on that. That's going to happen. I have that faith in him, and hearing that he's the president, it gave me more hope that we could rely on him to chart the way forward, because the truth is, as what I'll call out the SME sector, we're real scared. I mean, I use in Trini language, we're real scared right now, and we have every right to be, because if we don't realize what's happening, we will just be burying our heads in the sand and not realizing our business could fold. Now, just recently, my company,
Vida Gobin is, let's let me inform our listeners, viewers, is that Vida Gobin is in an interesting area of production. Mother-in-law, new foods. We know mother-in-law, pepper sauce, and so on. Can you give us a sense? I find it interesting that a really locally grown product, I presume, is making its way on the international market. I presume in the West Indian diaspora and outside of it. So give our viewers, our listeners, an appreciation of the industry that you work in.
So let me start by saying I started off in the media like yourself. I spent 18 years in the media, television producer, presenter, then to radio, print, and eventually
and you got smart.
And I got very smart. And I decided, you know what? My natural talent was cooking. I was really good at it. And I channeled that into my very first pepper sauce, which was called Mother-in-Law. I bottled the actual stuff you got when you go to these weddings and stuff. And it was such a hit, and this was back in 2008, that I did not even need to advertise. The goodness of what I put in that bottle and the quality spoke for itself. And now we are 24 products strong, and we are as far as in Australia. Okay. So we're in.
So tell our listeners how you've got into those markets with those typically Trini items.
Yeah. So the good thing is, people are in our country every day. They're passing through. They're loving our food. Since the advent of TikTok, food has become this amazing player on the global market. Even during COVID, food was eaten because that's what you do if you're doing nothing and if you're doing something. Food is just always at the top of the table. And so people who visited our island and people who carried stuff for friends came to me. I actually didn't even go for those markets. Those markets call itself to me. So we're in all those roti shops in New York. We're in shops in the UK, online and supermarket chains. And we're also in Australia. Every single player came to me. And that's what happens when you consistently produce at a quality level. You cannot let that quality drop, not in appearance. So if you see our products in the supermarket, you might actually pass it and think it's a foreign product because of the very marketing of it on its own. Because it has to sell itself on the shelf. So the way we present ourselves on our shelf, we have bottles that are customized to us. I must say thank you to TTMA. They're a big help in helping us source those on what you call the government has provided for on manufacturing sector no duties on packaging. So you get to have unique packaging to make your product stand out. So we're able through the TTMA to show the government, hey, these people are producing their manufacturing sector, no duties on packaging. And
Here,
that has
where
helped a whole lot.
where do you source your materials? We're talking about pepper, but if you're talking about what's 24, I think you said a range of products. You're going
Yeah.
through a whole lot of products there. Where are the
Yes.
sources for this material?
So the raw material itself to make all these amazing sauces comes from the NAMDEFCO range of markets. We deal sometimes directly with farmers, and if you don't know now, pepper is like gold. When I started this business, I would pay probably $100 a bag for pepper. Pepper is like $1,200 a bag
Wow.
and up. And I mean, we had to find unique ways in how we can not skyrocket price and stay on the market because that upward trend of pepper, and I think it's because of export again, as Ramesh was saying, and as our president was saying too, that we can find other ways to make money. And let me tell you, the agro sector, our in traveling the world, I can tell you this, Mr. Fraser. You see, our agriculture and how it tastes, what a pepper tastes like in Trinidad and what it tastes like in Miami, two different ball game. We are so strategically placed that the climate makes our stuff more flavorful. Because I'll tell you how I know this. I had actually gone to a manufacturer in Miami to try to manufacture this a number of years ago when things were good, when there was US. And I said, hey, let's copy this product. This is my recipe. And when they translated that with products from the States, that was not mother-in-law. That all my friends who tasted said, what is this? No flavor. But if you manufacture that same thing with that same recipe in Trinidad, you're sitting on gold. The flavor you are getting from the peppers or the pimentos, even what you call the dashing bush, you can't replicate that any part of the world. So we actually sit on a gold mine,
So
but
dashing
we
bush
have
and pepper
no market.
also? Dashing
Listen,
bush and pepper sauce?
no. I'm talking
Oh,
about the quality of agricultural products and what
okay,
it tastes
okay.
like. It cannot be replicated because one of the shops that carry my products in the UK sells shadow benny that comes from Thailand. And she said to me, Vida, it's nothing like what you all have. It can't even begin to touch it with flavor. So we really are a lucky island or twin island that when we produce agricultural products, I can tell you without a doubt, the flavor is max.
Okay,
So
so
we
Vida,
really
what about the competitive environment with if you're going to as far as Australia and so on, you might
yeah.
have an inbuilt competitive advantage in the West Indian markets. But what about the general markets, people who don't even know about the Caribbean?
So let's just say this first of all, to even sell pepper sauce in Trinidad and make a business out of it, you gotta be damn good because everybody have a pepper sauce recipe that their grandmother handed down. So if you can make it in this market where there are 500,000 recipes for pepper sauce, it's very easy to make it out there, especially if I tell you, as I told you, the base raw material is the most flavorful in the world. Even our pineapple, because one of our products is called pineapple lime sauce. It's a fusion of pineapple and lime in a glaze.
So,
Even our
so are
pineapple
you
plant.
saying, Vida, are you saying that the flavors would be the competitive advantage for your
Yes.
products?
Yes. If you buy my product and you pick up another product in any other part of the world, you go home and you taste it 2 years, go back for mother-in-law. Because it came from Trinidad. Not only because it's mother-in-law, the fact that it was manufactured in Trinidad and Tobago sets it apart and how it's going to taste. And this came from customers because the customer I deal with in the UK, she reported to me, she said the flavors we get from the islands cannot be beat, even if we, and I'm talking our island in particular. She said it cannot be beat because even if she takes some other islands, you can't compete with the Trinidadian products.
What is the percentage of local as opposed to foreign input into your products?
So I would say we have 80% local input, 20% foreign, and the foreign would be more so the packaging and some of the spices, like the paprika and the different exotic spices that we'd have to import. But all the raw materials, like the pepper and shadow benny, well, garlic is technically imported, and so that would be not one. But the main thing which would fill your pepper sauce bottle will be vinegar. Now that's made locally here. Naturally, the raw materials will be imported by the manufacturer, but at the end of the day, we have more raw materials locally in a bottle than foreign.
Right. Let me go to Ramesh to explain to our listeners the ability of something that is very local, pepper sauce, to compete internationally. And thinking not only of pepper sauce, but all the other things, we hear about tamarind ball and this thing, the kind of tanty products that we have grown accustomed
Things
to
that we take for
the
granted.
generations. How are they able to compete? I can understand is that they can compete in the local foreign market, meaning those people in the diaspora in Toronto and New York, etc., etc. But breaking into a market like Australia, that seems to me to be quite a stretch.
So Tony, thanks for that, right? Well, let me just say a little bit about Vidya and her operations. Vidya has been one of the champion SMEs in Trinidad and Tobago. Her exposure to things like TIC, we have Vidya in one of, we recently did a book, Tony, and maybe I should give you a copy of this book with the 100 top items we think are champion products from Trinidad and Tobago, food and beverage sector. And that is part about creating the exposure. It's a very high level, well put together professional book. Video products is in that book. Video, you know that? Your products have been showcased there. Yeah, and so just to let you know, that is the kind of exposure, things like TIC, trade mission, and as Vidya said, word of mouth, the diaspora. Now, for the most part, Tony, the diasporic market will facilitate the needs of the SMEs. When you start to talk about Australia, United States, Europe, in the wider scheme of things, you can't be producing one container of items per week. Once you're at that level, Tony, you have to remain with the diaspora. Once you start to talk about shipping 300 containers a month, and I'm talking about companies, we have companies in Trinidad that ship 300 containers a month. You cannot remain small and micro operators. You can't be making tulum for tulum's sake. You can't be making for doubles for double sake. You have to be thinking bigger. Now, we're going to take time for the videos of the world to get to that level. And there's still and always a space for video and what she's doing exceptionally well done. As she said, just to compete and create an opportunity for herself in the Trinidad market speaks volume, because she said that there are hundreds, but I will tell you, there are thousands of pepper sauce manufacturers. So when you see mother-in-law standing out, it's because she has put effort into allowing the brand to be built for itself and take it to our next level. So we're going to continue to do all we can to create market opportunities for these small manufacturers, but scale up is important. And that's where government will need to come into play to help these companies scale up to the level where when demand comes calling on their doorstep, they're able to facilitate demand. Because the worst thing you could do as a manufacturer is to say, I got an order from Tony that wants 2 containers, and you supply the 2 containers this month, and Tony call you back next month and you say, listen, I have shortage here, I don't have capacity, I don't have space, I don't have whatever, and I can't meet, because Tony not looking in video, again, he's going to look for someone who could consistently and reliably supply. So I don't want us to jump the gun and say, listen, all SMEs should start looking to reach these big markets. You know, creep before you can walk, satisfy a domestic space, look at the CARICOM space, and then slowly broaden your scope and reach out. And we are here to help in that regard.
Right. Ramesh, you touched on a point, a main point that I want to talk about, not only in terms of the products of Vidya's operations, but rather in a whole range of products. What about the facilitation, the infrastructure here to allow a manufacturer of the size and nature of Vidya's operations to function? As you indicated, you can't produce 300 whatever the size of the thing is this month, and next week produce 100. The seller of the products will wipe you off clean for inconsistency. So is the infrastructure on the ground?
So the infrastructure on the ground all depends on the company that you're speaking to, right? To me, Tony, the main challenge we have with regards to manufacturers in Trinidad and Tobago is the ease of doing business. And that is where the real challenge comes for them in terms of the ability to scale up. So I always tell people that at the doorstep of every manufacturing plant, we produce products that are very efficient, high standard, high quality. But what erodes the competitiveness and capabilities to bring things to the market is the things that happen between the doorstep of the manufacturer to the retail level. So, for example, Tony, you may not know, but years ago, you could have moved 3 containers from Arima, make 3 trips from Arima to the port. Now with the congestion of traffic, if you could do 1 in a day, that's plenty. That's a cost. Security. Supermarkets used to expend 25 years ago $10,000 per supermarket for security. Today, it's 100,000, 100. You have to have dog security, night security, camera security, security to move your workers, security to come and collect your cash. All these things drive up costs. And every time you drive up costs, you erode the competitiveness of the manufacturer in Trinidad and Tobago. And to me, that is the real competitive disadvantage that we have. Ability to scale up. Government is working with some manufacturers. You have all the Plebdeco and all the different industrial estate. What we want from government is to ensure that these real estate, these industrial sites are not competing at the commercial level. It makes no sense. Otherwise, someone will just go private sector and do it, right?
Right.
The government creating.
Ramesh, sorry, before you move on, what do you mean by the commercial structures?
Right. So
competitive.
So if the government is developing an industrial estate and renting out or leasing at $1 for it, and private sector is doing the same thing, there's no incentive really and truly. If I can't go in the private sector at $1, can I go in the government industrial estate for $1? It does not make sense. So what we're saying is that if the government is developing these real estate, incentivize people to come in this real estate, and it might be better for them to get returns via the employment created by the companies exporting and getting the foreign exchange, and importantly, able to tax the companies through corporation tax. That's how the government should look at getting the revenues, not through rental of the space at exorbitant rate or competing with the private sector who renting at relatively high rates. So these are the kind of things that we need to create the infrastructure to help SMEs in the country. The larger players can do it. They don't need to depend on the government to go in industrial park. When you look at the Ansa Makal and these people, they can go on the commercial, they can buy their properties and expand. But the videos of the world need the support with regards to putting the infrastructure. And then when we do put the infrastructure in place, we need to know that the infrastructure in the industrial park is optimal as well. You don't have cows running across the road, as in the case of Frederick Settlement, and squatters with the cow, and all these different kind of challenges.
So tell me, Ramesh, and our listeners, is the government aware of the needs of the medium and small manufacturers, the infrastructure, the facilitation, all of that which is required?
Of course, the government, that is one of the role of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association to advocate along these lines. So when they bring in new legislation like CESA, the Special Economic Zone, and all these different things, where we identify challenges within these pieces of legislation, within this new development and frameworks that they're putting in place, we bring it to their attention. Now, we understand that there are bureaucratic challenges working some of these things through. We do have successes for some manufacturers at times, and sometimes it takes longer to get the successes that we want. So for example, with VAT returns and all these different things, these are significant burdens for small manufacturers. Because if they're not getting their VAT returns, that's a cash flow problem for them. Somebody like you, Tony, you probably don't need your VAT returns immediately. You know, your savings can help you carry you over a couple of months. But Vidya need her VAT return immediately. So those are the things, you know, that we advocate for and continue to push for SMEs. We don't always have the success that we want immediately, but we continue to push the envelope in that regard.
Well, I could tell you one person who needs the advertising dollar is Sir Charles. As I said, this is a new venture, and all the support that he can get, I am sure that he'll be happy. Right, Sir Charles?
Definitely, Tony. Definitely.
We're throwing a plug there for Sir Charles. Now we are expecting some other people to join us.
They are on, Tony. The president is on, and my vice president.
All right, so let's turn to the president, who I quoted earlier today. He is Dale Parsons, who has attracted my attention with a headline. I don't know if he put the headline or the Guardian put the headline, but Dale, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi,
right,
how are you?
So let's see your picture. Let's see how you look. You look like a big fella. You towered over the prime minister. I'm too sure if you like that, but you know, seriously.
Yeah, I did.
So Dale, congratulations to you for your appointment as president. I presume you have been in the executive at some point in time, and now you've been elevated to where everything, not everything, but the main thing falls on your shoulder. I want to take you up with that quote that you made to the newspaper, that to the effect the non-energy manufacturing sector can fill some spaces, spaces being left by, you know, powers outside of our control. If the president of the US determines that he's going to cancel a contract, we can do little about that. But however, we can make some strides in the manufacturing sector. How confident are you that that can happen? And I'm not talking, yes, I understand it's going to be over a period of time, but I'm not talking about 20 years into the future.
Right. So during my speech yesterday, my opening speech at the TTMA event, the annual general meeting and the leadership event that followed, one of the things that I spoke about is that we'll grow exports from the present number, which is 6.2 billion as at the close of 2024, to 10.6 billion at the end of 2030. That is a little over $4 billion in export growth. Now, figure that a past president in 2019 had set a goal to double exports by the end of 2025. And at that time in 2019, which was pre-COVID, exports were at 3.3 billion. So we expect that, seeing that we were at 6.2 billion at the close of 2024 in non-energy exports. And again, just to reiterate what the CEO of TTMA was saying, Dr. Ramdeen, basically what he was saying is that when we define our numbers, we use purely local manufactured goods, not local manufactured non-energy goods. So it's not a derivative of any energy product whatsoever. So, for example, ammonia is a derivative, is considered a non-energy product. So we have disaggregated ammonia, scrap iron, etc. He would have mentioned that before. So this 3.3 billion that was there, what were our exports in 2019? As of the end of 2024, we had 6.2 billion, and the president at that time had said that she wanted to double exports by the end of 2025, which will be 6.6. So I'm pretty sure we will cross that 6.6 by the end of this year because exports are already up.
What you base that projection on? Is it something, a wishful thought in your mind?
No,
or is there some substantial for it?
No. What we have found is you're asking us how we're going to reach there to the 10.6, correct?
Yes.
Right. So what we have found during COVID, we are seeing almost a deja vu with all the tax impositions placed by President Trump. Essentially, what we saw during COVID, with all of the shipping and logistics problems that we had, and some companies not being able to supply raw materials and so on, and products, we found that a lot of our CARICOM neighbors started to turn to Trinidad. They started to look inward because trying to get a shipment out of China or United States, the freight had multiplied by 5 times. So typically, like as of today, the freight from China on a 20-foot container is a little over $2,500 US. During COVID, a 20-foot container would have cost you close to $20,000 US, right? So it was very difficult to import products from far. Take, for example, United States. Freight went up. A 20-foot container from the States right now is a little over about $2,800, right? Right. During COVID, if you had to import a container, the price was like close to $12,000 a 20-foot container. So what our Caribbean neighbors did is they started to look to Trinidad and started to look inward. What we see happening, what we expect to happen, and we're already seeing it with countries like Curacao, Martinique, St. Croix, etc., is you're seeing that some of the non-traditional CARICOM countries are looking inward towards Trinidad to buy. Why? Because the quality is international standard. The quality is very high. It could compete on any shelf, anywhere in the world, globally. So that is one of the reasons why, because if Donald Trump, who is here for the next 5 years, continue on this path that he's going, right, with imposing taxes and ship berthing fees, etc., Chinese-built ship berthing fees, etc., it's going to be a deterrent for people to do business in the United States. You understand?
Yes. Well, I must say that what you are talking about on the road to realizing some of the original CARICOM objectives. Go back to 1989 when we talked about the single market and economy, to be talking about moving goods and services across the region without a whole lot of red tape associated with it. Are you saying that there has been some movement in terms of integrating production across the region?
When you say integrating production,
like getting more materials from Guyana or wherever.
Of course. A lot of the food ingredients that we buy right now for even production within CARICOM, not only for like pepper sauce and so on, but a lot of the ingredients come from within CARICOM. Bananas, etc., plantain, cassava, etc. So the thing is that what is happening is that while President Trump is imposing taxes, we are seeing a more gravitation towards within CARICOM rather than going outside of CARICOM. Right. Okay, and what they are also seeing is the prices are better and the quality is as the same or even better. It's international standards.
So before I go on to ask you the other question, is there somebody else in the waiting room that we can let in to have a discussion with us?
Yeah, Tony, I I have in the waiting room, I'm seeing in the waiting room Mr. Barry Fakri, who is actually one of the principal from VF Packaging, as well as he is a vice president of the TTMA. And I have Jonathan Garcia, who's the corporate sec of the TTMA, but he's also the principal of Crystal Limited. So we have two, well, he's a smaller manufacturer. Barry's medium, Dale is considered large, and of course, Vidya is small to micro.
All right. So
we try to have different brands there.
So we have Barry, let me get it correctly. We have Barry
Fakuri, and Jonathan Garcia. Jonathan Garcia from Crystal.
Crystal, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program, and tell our listeners something. Let's start with Barry. Tell our listeners. Incidentally, I know there are a couple of ways that I've heard Fakuri pronounced. Am I pronouncing it correctly, or teach me?
I would say you're pronouncing it correctly.
All right, I could live with
but
that.
But they may have other people who may differ, but where I sit, I would say pronouncing it correctly.
Okay, well, let me go with that. Yeah, so tell our listeners something about the products that you produce and the circumstances in which you produce them.
Okay, so what we produce is we manufacture packaging for the food service and agricultural sector. When you say the circumstances, the manner we manufacture them, or the reason we
under the
conditions,
manufacturing. I'm talking about under the conditions, government support, the infrastructure, the taxes. I know manufacturers have a real beef in terms of the returns on the value-added tax, etc., etc. So those circumstances, are they propitious to allow manufacturing to develop and move on?
Well, I would say the manufacturers, we have a love-hate relationship with, obviously, all the policies and the government, where the government is concerned in terms of managing our VAT refunds. But we also get a lot of support from the government and other initiatives. For example, when we look into set up our facilities, we get a bit more assistance now with TIPA, where they provide a bit more assistance in fast-tracking approvals, etc. They also assist us when it comes to funding for some of the trade missions. As Ramesh spoke about, there are quite a few trade missions we attend. There are also different programs that the government has invested in through Export TT, well, what was formerly Export TT, to assist manufacturers similar to myself to improve our processes, as well as look for markets both in CARICOM but also extra-regionally. So our manufacturing company, we've only been in production for 10 years. Okay. So we began manufacturing in 2014 because we saw a need to diversify our business. My family business is 97 years old. I'm fourth generation in the business. And when we finished school, both my brother, my cousin, and myself, we realized the business was too small for three of us. So in looking for other opportunities, we decided if we had to do something, we needed to make it ourselves. And through that means, we decided to get involved in manufacturing. And we looked at industries where we saw opportunities. And the agricultural sector and the food service sectors where we saw growth throughout Trinidad and Tobago, as well as throughout the region. And we decided to jump into that industry. We started very small, and we have continuously grown year by year and continue to introduce new products that assist in the development of the agricultural sector specifically. For example, we manufacture egg cartons. If you go to a supermarket anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the our CARICOM neighbors, they will be using egg packaging that we manufacture. So we take pride not just in the fact that we manufacture products, but we're able to manufacture inputs that assist in growing our agricultural sector and improving our food dependency and removing our dependency, let me reword that, removing dependency from international sources.
Mm-hmm. Barry, you mentioned a very important thing there, and I'm dealing with this whole business of entrepreneurship. which I am sure is in need of boosting in the country, moving people away from buying and selling business and not knocking them. The buyers and the sellers will always exist. They don't need me to help them to exist. But you're talking about looking at the business, the family business, as the three of you inherited it, and perceiving the possibility into something else. What makes you do that? Is it a need, or is it some kind of entrepreneurship ability which has to be learned and spread throughout the country?
I think it has. I think you're touching on the topic there. It's something that needs to be learned and spread, and I think it's from growing up, being told that nothing comes easy. My father lost his and grandfather lost their business in the coup in 1990 and had to start from, I would say, -0. So I've always grown up knowing about hard work and putting in extra effort and long hours in anything that you do, as well as the fact that you have to take risks if you want to get to the next level. And I think that is something that most manufacturers, as well as entrepreneurs, would say they have. They're willing to take a chance. They're willing to take a chance and fail and start over and then take a chance again. And I think it's something that
Where does that drive come from? Is it something inherent? Are groups of people, like you said, your parents who were in business and so on, and they got swamped out, but still the persistence. Where does that drive from inside come? And are there external factors, meaning are there opportunities to be seen to move into the space?
I think there are tremendous opportunities. I think where manufacturing is concerned, there are so many opportunities that young entrepreneurs can look into. And something like what Vida did, for example, in the food sector, people don't like to take those chances because it's very easy for someone to look at the job they currently have and be like, am I going to sacrifice this guaranteed salary for something new that I don't know if I'm going to make a living out of? And I think the reality is that, to get back on what you discussed, never having the guarantee of a salary. Growing up, it was only if family business did okay, my parents had a good year, would they be able to provide? So because of these facts, you basically adopt the fact that, hey, what? I have to do it on my own. I have to go out there and figure out a way to make an honest living.
All right. Let me ask Ramesh to come in here. How do we inculcate? I see Dale passing. Do you want to come in?
Yeah. You ask
come
a
in.
specific question about how do you get that entrepreneurial spirit, and that entrepreneurial spirit is something that is in your gut. Is something that you want to do. It's like Vida. She switched from being a radio announcer to doing a pepper sauce at home and gradually growing the business. Some people have a vision of where they think they can be, and it's almost like a burning inside to move forward and move ahead. It's not only about a need for money, because if you run after the money, you're surely gonna fail. The money is one part of it, but sometimes you feel it's just a feeling inside that you want to move ahead and you want to prosper, and nothing can stop you. So this feeling and this passion that you have really it mushrooms into a kind of vision, and it doesn't happen overnight. And like Barry said, you will try something and you will fail, but success comes after failure. So most business people, right, they will try several things before they succeed, and then you might see them driving a nice fancy car and then wondering how they get that, but they would have lost a lot of money along the way.
Right.
And I'm speaking from experience. So really, it's like a burning inside, and then you develop a vision, and then you develop a vision and a passion to go after it, and nothing will stop you. Nothing. will stop you, even failures.
But let me ask
Tony,
Ramesh, how do we begin to
just
inculcate those virtues? I don't know if virtues is the right word. Those dispositions to get after. Somebody comes out of A level and they're looking for work. Somebody goes into to some kind of existing business and settle there, as opposed to somebody who can inculcate all of these desires inside of your body to go out and do something that is different.
So sometimes it is a traumatic event in your life. When I say traumatic, I mean some event that you reach a stumbling block and you don't know how to move forward. So, like Barry, his issues were that he had two siblings and himself, and they needed to expand the business. And the business that they had couldn't sustain the three of them. So Barry' idea was that they needed to do something, and he looked for the lowest opportunity and then exploit it. And he also said that it wasn't easy, but thankfully that grew and grew year upon year. And like Vida, I guess it was a similar kind of thing. She probably felt I don't know, not satisfied doing the radio announcer thing. I'm not sure, Vida.
Plenty,
I'm not sure how to stop it.
plenty work in the media and little pay, so she get out. She's smart at that. But
Yes.
Ramesh, I want to ask you, how do we begin to inculcate that in a formal kind of way? Because let's assume, and I'm just calling figures, 1 in every 500 persons has the desire to do what these entrepreneurs have done. But we cannot live alone on the 1 out of 500. So how do we begin to inculcate it?
Tony, yeah, we have to make manufacturing sexy again. We have to make entrepreneurship sexy again. And the way to do that is to start with the education system. In Trinidad and Tobago, our education system produce employees. We need to start thinking about producing entrepreneurs. The factors of production speak to land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. We're blessed with land in Trinidad and Tobago. We have an abundance of land. We have, well, not abundance, but relative, right? We have capital, but we don't spend much time to build entrepreneurship. And I think we need to look and revisit at not just the university level, but even at the primary school level coming through. Gone are the days people, when you used to go to school and you're not academically inclined, you're doing welding shops and all this stuff. We don't have those things again. And that is one way to become an entrepreneur. You could start with a welding shop and gradually become, your own entrepreneur doing a number of different things. We have people in the TTMA started like that and today own radiator shops and those kind of things. But they are so far and few in between. I could tell you maybe 2 of them continue to exist through that framework where they build through. But Tony, we have actually a good example, Mr. Jonathan Garcia from Crystal, who have come through the system like that. So let's hear a story. I could tell you what I think theoretically, what we need to do. Look at the education system and try to groom. I read something today, actually, a listing of the top millionaires and billionaires in the world. And none of them are employees. All of them are employers or athletes or that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you rarely see an employee becoming a billionaire or a millionaire.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. All right. So I think we still have Jonathan Garcia inside the room. Jonathan, are you there?
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, I am. Thank you
Yes,
very much for having me, sir.
Right. And give our listeners an appreciation of the kind of business operation that you're involved in.
Okay, so my name is Jonathan Garcia. I'm the Deputy Managing Director of a chemical company by the name of Crystal Limited. We're located near Rima Industrial Estate. We manufacture a lot of cleaning products, but our main product is the PVC solvent for the pipes that you use to bond the pipes. We have a multi-purpose solvent for both hot and cold water for pipes and fittings with international standards from America. I actually just started exporting just a little under 2 years ago, and thank God, and also the TTME, that we're actually in 12 countries at this time in a short span of 2 years.
So is that an industry based in chemistry? You have to have an appreciation for the science of the chemistry to make the kinds of products that you're talking about, the solvents, etc.
If I on sciences in school. Hello?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I said I actually hated chemistry and sciences in school, and look what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't like it at all. Honestly. I had a passion for business. I always liked business, honestly. And then my dad had his chemical company. After he had a lot of companies before, he formed this chemical company, and I came in at a time when he had colon cancer. So it was either I finish school or I go in to work with him and build the family business. And I decided to come. I had one more year for my degree, and I came out of school, and I decided to go with him full time. I started off doing sales on the road. Then I went into manufacturing. Now I'm actually in charge of manufacturing, sales, and export sales also.
Which is a greater need in a business like yours? A science-based understanding or the business, the entrepreneurial vision to move from A to B to C
I
to...
think an entrepreneurial vision, because at the end of the day, even if you're not in the science background, you're an entrepreneur, you can always employ the right people to do what you need to get done.
Right. So the business sense and the business drive, that's an
Passionately
important.
drive. Definitely the passionately drive, for sure. Because anything you do in this life, you must always do it 100%. And if you cannot do it, don't do it at all.
Mhm. Now, what is you? I think you talked about being on an industrial estate.
Yeah.
How is the government assistance important in terms of spurring the growth of the business?
Well, right now we're under ETech. ETech is Evolving Technologies. They're in charge of the park that we're in right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so they are the governing body. We basically rent from them. We have a 25 or 30-year lease, and when that expires, you could rent again for 30 years, or you have the opportunity to purchase from them.
Mhm. Do you have conversations with perhaps young people that you employ about getting into an industry like the one that you are involved in?
I mean, honestly, you have to want to be in the industry. Like what I get into, honestly, all that glitters is not gold. Manufacturing is not an easy business in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a very difficult business. Whereas people would say, Jonathan, those chemicals you manufacture, why don't you just bring it in from America? Why just import it from China and resell? But the accomplishment the accomplishment that you see and you receive from going into a hardware or supermarket and seeing your brand on the shelf and knowing that your two hands manufacture these products, or you have something to do with the process of it getting on the shelf. I don't think that could ever be replaceable of importing a product similar.
And how do you compete against imported products? I presume that there are other chemicals,
Of
foreign
course.
imported, chemicals. How do your products compete against them?
We always compete on quality, consistency, and we always have stock. Always have stock. And customer service is key.
Is there great import content in your products?
Of course, everything I manufacture is imported. All my raw materials are imported.
Mm-hmm. And
I buy a little bit locally, some bottles and caps and labels, boxes, but the actual chemicals and the raw materials, maybe 95% is imported.
Mm-hmm. And you're still able to compete against the foreign products.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And why is that so? What
Because
are the elements of it?
Because we are manufacturers, we get a lot of duty-free concessions. And then we also, we have this business down to science. My dad has this business over 30 years. So we know how to maneuver, how to cut costs, how to,
All right.
He basically knows all the intricacies of the business. Even though he's a little bit semi-retired now, he's still very active, but not as active.
All right. Let me go back to Dale. Dale, you're still here? Dale Parsons.
Yes,
No?
I am. Yes, I
Okay.
am.
All right. I am fascinated by your your ambition and seemingly your confidence to achieve, to close the gap a little bit between the, industrial manufacturers based in in chemicals and all of the imported stuff and so on. Do you have the right kind of, when I say you, I mean the manufacturing sector. Do you have the right kind of ingredients in the manufacturing sector, including human capacity to achieve that ambition that you talk about?
Yes, I would say yes to some extent. Some specialty manufacturing requires specialized people, specialized skills. And usually those specialized skills we import those people to train local people if it's not available locally. So whether it's to operate machinery or any special chemical formulas, those things, if it's not available locally, we use foreign knowledge, train locals to do the same thing, basically.
Yeah. Some time ago, there was a concern or a request from the local manufacturers for our foreign embassies, situated here, there, and everywhere, to become involved in terms of assisting the local manufacturers with regard to what a certain market will require, what is possible, etc., etc. Is that infrastructure within the foreign ministry apparent and working?
I would have to say no. I would have to say no. So if you're using we're talking about like foreign embassies and so on.
Yes, definitely.
No, I would have to say no. You would have to advertise either globally or go through some agency to find the skills that you need, and probably bring down that person maybe for a month or 2 or 3, and let them train the locals.
No, I'm not saying that
Tony, let me see if I can help. I think
Sure,
what you're
sure.
asking about is the missions over Trinidad and Tobago missions overseas. Yes, within the recent past, the TTMA has advocated for, and we were fortunate to work with the Minister of Trade to allow the missions to have commercial attaches and trade facilitation offices. So we have about 4 or 5 commercial attaches placed in Jamaica, Guyana, Suriname. There's one in Panama, one based in London, and we have a trade office, trade facilitation office in Cuba. The question is it optimal? Are they well resourced? Are they equipped? We have personnel in place, and it's work in progress. We're working towards getting the right frameworks in place for to allow them to do what we want. And what we want from them, we want them to promote Trinidad and Tobago products. We want them to provide market intelligence for us. We want them to find opportunities, market opportunities for our members from the Trinidad and Tobago. And they are doing these things, but we need these commercial attaches to be better equipped. And I know Barry could speak to some experiences he would have had with the one in Jamaica, for example. So I'll let him get 30 seconds and speak on that just now. But what we need from these commercial attaches, as I said, not just to have them more equipped, but we need more. We need more and more strategic market. So as we continue to grow our operation, expand our horizon beyond our traditional market. So for example, we're looking at the African continent at this point in time. We should have a commercial attache, not just a trade mission, because not just a mission or embassy, because traditional missions and embassies all about facilitating visa need, international relation issues, and that kind of thing. Wherever we have a mission, we probably should have a commercial attache or a commercial officer attached to this mission doing that kind of work. Because today, the major issues is market access and trade, not really and truly about wars and these things, why these missions were originally created, to create peace in the world. So let me just turn it over to Barry. I know Barry have some experience working with the commercial attaches abroad. Barry?
That's
right. Yeah, thanks so much. Yes, Tony. So my experience, I was looking for a distributor in Jamaica, and the government put a commercial attache in Jamaica 6 months prior. So I reached out to the commercial attache and had samples sent to her. And she and I, together, we looked for potential distributors across in Jamaica. And what we did after we highlighted a few potential distributors, we booked meetings and I flew across to Jamaica. And she and I drove across the entire island together, meeting with various distributors to find an ideal fit for my organization. And after, just to give you a further insight, that happened in February of last year. And after back and forth meetings, we eventually got an order confirmed by October of last year to get my products reestablished in Jamaica. So it's a long process, but the fact that you have a commercial attaché there helps build the bridges to allow you to get access to these markets. These commercial attachés, they're on the ground, they're working on the ground, they know people on the ground, they're able to develop relationships. And this is how you're able to establish yourself in markets where you may not live in these markets, and you don't have to travel to these markets every month to keep looking for distributors, because you have someone there on the ground working for you. A perfect example, you asked Dale a little while ago, how do you come to this number of 10 billion? And he spoke to you about the global climate and instability right now because of tariffs and that the US government is placing on different parts of the world and specifically focus on China. After the announcement was made yesterday, the first thing I did this morning was I reached out to some of the commercial attachés in other markets to see what opportunities may exist where countries may now be looking to find other sources for their items, because the tariffs, if they were to import it from Asia, may be a little too high.
You talk about alternative sources, which is a discussion that has been going on in the industry for a long time, and so too the issue of getting in to those markets which are physically closest to us, i.e. Central America and South America. And those attempts have been going on for a few decades, really. How are we moving into, or are we at all moving into those markets? I know, just it struck me that we had a number of arrangements with the likes of Colombia and Mexico and free trade agreements. I suppose that is something of the past.
Well, I won't say it's something of the past. Some of our major and largest manufacturers, for example, Bermudez or Associate Brands, that's the Lockjack Group, they will be in some of these markets. I think the challenge with smaller to medium-sized companies like myself and other manufacturers is the resources to get into these markets. These markets are predominantly Spanish-based markets, so obviously the language is a challenge. And they're also competitive manufacturing markets. We don't have someone on the ground in these markets. The closest we have in terms of having someone on the ground is in Panama, where we have a commercial attaché there. So maybe if we're trying to really get into these markets and focus a lot more on these markets, they may need someone there working on these markets. We currently have a commercial attaché in Panama. We have one in North America, and then we have one in the UK. And we also always have to remember our largest manufacturing base is food and beverage. And the largest diaspora of Trinbagonians predominantly live in the North American market and the UK market. So it's strategic that we have these commercial attachés there. If we are able to see proper benefits from these commercial attachés there, then the TTMA, we can now advocate to the government, as Ramesh spoke about, that we should have commercial attachés in Africa now, and we should have commercial attachés in multiple markets that we visit on trade missions. That once we see the benefits, then we could really try to go to the government to get them to put commercial attachés in other markets.
Right. No, we gentlemen and lady, we cannot talk about business operations, export and import business without talking about foreign exchange. And we know every Monday morning there is a scream and shout about foreign exchange availability. And unfortunately, those who scream the loudest are those who contribute little or nothing to the earning of foreign exchange. But how is the known I don't want to use the word shortage, but perhaps that's the best word, shortage of foreign exchange impacting the manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know who wants to take that.
I could take it.
Yes, go ahead.
So, as you know, as Ramesh would have mentioned before, Trinidad and Tobago manufacturers or manufacturers in Trinidad and Tobago have have an avenue to get US for raw materials through Exim Bank. It's a
Right.
facility that we lobbied for during COVID because trying to get US became harder and harder over the past 10 years. What has been happening, to answer the question, so that's how we get US to buy raw materials to turn it over, but we repatriate that US dollars that we get from Exim Bank and multiply it. And that's how we are able to fuel our working capital for raw materials to grow our export sales. But more so, the the shrinking of the market that the economy is feeling is because since COVID happened, there has been a global inflation of by about 18% from 2020 to now. And that is really decreasing the buying power of even the US dollar, not only the Trinidad dollar, but the US dollar. So you would have heard even the Prime Minister talking about, 5 years ago, $500 is really only worth $200 worth of product now. So the fact is that besides there's an apparent shrinkage because the buying power of the US dollars earning in the country is less. Not only through the energy sector, because the energy sector is depressed, but there's an apparent shrinkage because the buying power is much less than it was due to inflation. Your mic on. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah. A big issue in today's world of trading, no surprise here, is the issue of tariffs being instituted by the government of the United States, and whether we like it or not, that's what the government has determined to do. Of course, most recently there has been something of a pullback on the size of the tariff, but I heard one expert last night saying that still the average will be around 20-25%, whatever the figures might be. How is that impacting, or has it started impacting at all on the export of goods, goods, not services, goods to the USA?
So the problem, I think that maybe that tariff is a little bit misunderstood by a lot, because Trinidad, in fact, our exports to the United States, we only got 10% tariff versus the rest of the world is the lowest. So all things being equal, our nearest neighbor, I think, is Guyana. They have 47% of their exports going to the United States versus us 10%. So, if we were to compare ourselves with the rest of the world, I don't think it's that bad, Tony. I think we are actually in the best position with regards to these tariffs. So we should not look at these tariffs as a deterrent to export to the United States. I think simply what we can do, though, is if there is an issue with our products being more uncompetitive because of the 10% imposition, we can either discount it a little bit for the time being, so that to allow the importer to buy the products, because we do export a lot of our food and beverage products to the United States. Or we could export anywhere else where there's no tariffs, Tony.
Yeah. And that's an issue that, in some parts of the developing world, is becoming something of a challenge that people are talking about seriously, that you could never bypass or ignore the American market, but you can expand the markets outside of America. And if we go back to the 1980s, you're talking about attempts by developing countries to establish their own trading arrangements amongst themselves. How viable is that a possibility today in light of the tariff barriers? And the thing about the tariff barriers is that given the unpredictable nature of the President of the United States Act at present. We don't know where this thing will go tomorrow, the next day, etc.
Well, it's changing by the minute, but it is viable because and it is a question of finding opportunities that are of least resistance. So if you find that you can export to, let's just say, Canada, for example, which has no import restrictions or no import taxes or so, versus the United States, and it's the same product, same price, right? And same similar destination, same freight rates, etc. Well, they'll just shift it to the path of least resistance. So I don't think it's a question of viability, but it's a question of optimizing where your exports are getting the highest repeat purchase month by month. Really, I just want to go back to the 1930s before World War II. I remember I was reading in the Great Depression, I think that the then president, I'm not sure who he was, did a similar pattern to what President Trump is doing now. And he had
That
Ramesh
it was spread
conscripted.
everywhere, the beggar thy neighbor policy.
Yes, and he had to eventually reverse it because it triggered World War II. But the thing about it is we don't think that what President Trump is doing is sustainable. Yes, it is changing. Not, I wouldn't say by the day, I would say by the minute, because every so often you see something flash across your phone that this has changed and that has changed and etc. etc. So I don't think it's too much of for Trinidadians to worry about. I think we can overcome that hurdle, and we got the best end of the stick. The rest of the world got the other end of the stick, if you understand what I mean, with regards to tax impositions and imports into the United States.
Yeah. Let me hear, Ramesh, on what you think about this tariff barrier. Does it pose a real threat to us here in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago in particular? We know that Guyana has a 40-odd%. We have a 10%, but 10% is from what, 1 to 2%. So you have an 8% increase. I don't know if that is significant enough to pose a serious problem.
But Tony, we can't also we need to look at this beyond the 10% that Donald Trump is putting on. We need to look at it in the context on the macro level of President Trump is putting tariffs. Other countries in the world are retaliating and putting tariffs. We need to look at it in the context of what that means. Are we facing a new dispensation where protectionism is the environment that we're trading into? Is it that we're moving away from a free trade environment? Is it all the preferential arrangements that we have is going to eventually fall by the wayside based on the precedent that Mr. Trump? If it's just this thing with Mr. Trump alone, as my president said, as Dale said, relative to all other goods going into the United States, we are not that bad. If we look at our competitors, Guyana, Mexico, Mexico previously went into the United States duty-free under the NAFTA arrangement. Now that if they were made to face a duty going into the United States, then that places us in a better position relative to Mexico. Our real challenge with this 10% imposition would come from domestic production in the United States. The domestic producers in the United States now will have a 10% window to play with. Now, how many of our products go into the United States compete with indigenous production from United States? So that's why Adele is saying, this one-off thing with the tariffs by Donald Trump, we don't have too much to fear. We need to consistently look at it. And I think we need to look at it from the broader perspective of how countries retaliate to that and what it means for the new world order. Are we moving to an environment now where everybody's starting to put up tariff as a retaliatory measure to what Donald Trump is doing? And we don't know how this thing is going to unfold. When elephant dance, the ants get trampled. And that is my fear. We who are small micro operators in the wider scheme of things, we are price takers. We are not price setters. When these big people, the European Union versus United States and China, all of a sudden it will have a trickle-down effect that will impact on us. Probably not today, probably not by the end of this year, but if it continues going in this particular direction, as Dale was alluding to, leading up to World War II, the Great Depression, the protectionist system, the mercantilist system, all those things created an avenue where I win and you lose in terms of trade. We don't want to go back into that environment. So to say that it is not something to be worried about, we'll be fooling ourselves. We have to look at it and look at it at the macro level. And another important thing, Tony, out of this whole discussion that people are not talking about is what is the status of the WTO and all of this? We're not hearing about the world governing body that's supposed to have oversight on trade. They are very silent, and to me that is worrying. So those are some of my thoughts on this whole tariff escalation issue.
I'm going to come to Vida Gubin in a moment to find out if there has been any impact of the tariff. Well, it's early days yet, but nevertheless. But I want also to recognize, Ramesh and others, that with regard to China, and China is obviously a major target of the US president, given the challenge that China is posing to American production and so on, even the currency business. And of course, President Trump has talked about China in the Caribbean, and we might have to make a choice between the US and China. Is that a real threat that you see coming into the foreground soon enough?
Tony, China is a major player in the international arena. We can't fool ourselves. I don't have the exact figures with me, but I can tell you a significant amount of imports of raw material and machinery that the manufacturers use in Trinidad and Tobago comes from China. And if President Trump continues to have this policy of embargo or sanctions against China, it inevitably is going to affect manufacturing capabilities in Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, we have to be very worrisome about that trading relationship, that whatever is happening between President Trump and China, we need to look at it very closely because it will, in some form or fashion, impact on us. If, for example, this issue with the tax on using Chinese ship and all the pronouncements that are being made by Donald Trump at this point in time, we have to look at it very closely. And if it does not impact on us today, inevitably it's going to have impact on us. So I hear what my president is saying about the 10% imposition of the tariff may not be too difficult. But if it, as I say, if it's just that, we can easily navigate those waters. But to me, that's the tip of the iceberg coming out of the presidents.
Tony, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Why do you think Trump is doing all of this?
Well, frankly, I cannot come up with
I can
logical
answer
reason.
that.
No, let me answer first. I'm saying that I cannot come up with logical reasons. I think it's purely revenge. It's rooted in revenge to get his own back on countries and individuals that he believes have done not simply America. It's portrayed as America, but I think it's quite personal in many instances.
So let me explain to you why he's doing it. He's trying to bring back manufacturing to the United States because manufacturing in the United States, most of it has shifted to low-cost production towards low production countries, the rest of the world, whether it be China, India, wherever, Russia, wherever. The fact of the matter is that the fancy Prada and Coach handbags, if you look inside, you'll see the tags say made in China. So all the fancy brand name stuff, right? A lot of the fancy brand name stuff are made in China. And what happened is manufacturing in the United States is almost dead. But during the period, the last 20 years of the low-cost production shifts from United States to low-cost production countries like China and India and Pakistan, etc., Bangladesh, and so forth. What has happened is the Chinese economies have built up. Because when you shift production, what you're doing is you're sending foreign exchange into China. And it has built up the Chinese economy to a state where they are getting stronger and stronger. What Donald Trump is trying to do is stop that and preserve the local manufacturing and production in the United States.
No,
But
I understand that, Dale, but I am saying that that is not a realistic, certainly not in the short run. One, you have to move plants back to the United States or create plants in the United States, which were never there. And in terms of production capacity and competition with the Bangladeshis of this world, America simply cannot compete in that arena.
Well, we know that, but also it's too late. I will tell you why it's too late. Because a lot of the cars that are being made in the United States, a lot of the components were coming from China and the rest of the world, Russia, Ukraine, etc. And what has happened is that the Chinese now have learned the technologies and they have learned the quality inputs and the quality control, and they are now copying it. And you're seeing a lot of Chinese cars all over the world, in the United States, in Trinidad. Even in Trinidad, there are Chinese trucks and Chinese cars driving on the road right now that look just as good as a Mazda or Toyota. So I think it is what he's trying to do by preventing something that already happened is too late. And if he plans to impose taxes on the rest of the world, what will happen is a lot of the rest of the world will retaliate and reciprocate with taxes on US product. And a country cannot stand on itself divided without trade to the rest of the world. So he will have,
sorry, go ahead, finish.
So he will have to choose his battles well and decide who and which countries that he wants to continue trade with and not.
Right. And I think too, I don't doubt you, but I think too that there is happening in the world today a shifting of the power bases. And America is caught up in that. When you think about the creativity of the Chinese production houses compared to what's happening in America. Recently in the Biden presidency, they were talking about rundown infrastructure in the United States, which has not been, updated over 20 and 25 years. So that I think America is falling into some serious problems with the rest of the world, and it's particularly China. And that is why he's so uptight against China. But somebody, Vida wanted to say something.
It's too late. Yeah, go ahead, Vida.
It is too late because Dale practically said what I was going to say, which is because Trump came from entrepreneurial background, he feels in his head it's still back in the 1980s or whatever, and that he could bring back manufacturing. He doesn't realize how that horse bolt that stable long time. And then there's so many unions in the US, they will not allow workers to work cheaply. And so there's no way they can now manufacture at a cost-effective way for the world to buy. So basically, Dale said it in a nutshell. But let me just say one thing, because I know you guys will take over, men generally doing the meetings. But I'll tell you one thing. I just want to say thank you to the TTMA because of TIC. I now have Bryden's on board as my distributor, not only for the Caribbean, but in the near future to go further. And that is a big deal for a small company like my own. So thank you, guys. It was TIC.
Vida, before you go, tell us about where your products are available. I am anxious. I'm a pepper fan. I'm anxious to taste some of that mother-in-law pepper. Where is it available?
Our president is a customer, so he could tell you, and I feel happy when he tells you where he buys his mother-in-law products. So Dale, tell him where you buy your mother-in-law products. I'm guessing he's not there.
Dale,
so
are you there?
I'm guessing
right
not.
now. Right now I buy it at Extra Foods. All the varieties available there, all the sauces, the nice square bottle, the presentation is unique. It's a unique presentation.
Are they in the north at all?
So actually, we're available at all major supermarket chains, whether it's Massey, True Value, Extra Foods, JTA, and now that Bryden's on board, we're now going to go what you call down trade, which are the smaller places, because I really focused on the big guys and some export, but now that Bryden's on board, we're now going to really run that market through with products.
Okay, so it's available at the Massey stores.
Most definitely.
Right. Okay. I shall go and try it. As I say, I'm a fan of
pepper
sauce.
Just know we don't only produce pepper sauce. We actually produce marinades, hot sauces, and of lately we have 4 range of mayo products, some of the best and high quality dressings you'll probably get that's locally made from scratch. So we don't import none of that. We work from scratch with local ingredients to produce our dressings.
Vida, I think I will have to ask Sir Charles to charge you an advertising fee.
So Charles, I'm telling you, I'm a big fan. So because I'm a fan and I adore you from way back when, please don't charge me.
No problem.
Yes,
So thank you guys. I have to run because the grand is here.
sure.
But it was a pleasure being with
Glad to
all
have
of you.
had you.
And congratulations again, Mr. Parson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go to the future now and start with Ramesh to give us a sense of where this thing is going, this manufacturing sector is going, as advocated by the president of the association. And of course, we're going to come to him to talk about the future. But where do you see manufacturing in Trinidad and Tobago? And when you talk manufacturing, we're obviously talking about the non-energy sector. Where is it going from here?
Tony, before I pronounce on that, I don't know if you recognize, we have another member of the TTMA on board with us, Fresh Start, and he's a up-and-coming manufacturer. So maybe you could probably ask him.
Sorry, I didn't. What's his name?
This is Marcus Sankow.
Oh yeah. I have you here, sir, but I ignored you. Sorry, not deliberate.
So no, but you could pose the question to him because he's someone who's looking at the future as well for expansion and growth. He's looking at our markets. He just came back from the trade mission on the seas with us, and there's a lot of possibilities. He's looking to push his operations beyond the domestic level. So you can pose the same question to him.
Right, Marcus. Sorry about ignoring you. It wasn't deliberate. I have the
Well, I was enjoying the conversation. I mean, there was a lot.
So before we go internationally on the trade missions and your efforts abroad and so on, give our listeners an appreciation of what kind of business you're involved in and the products that you produce.
So Fresh Start Limited is a manufacturer of fresh fruit juices and fruit juice concentrates. We have been in the business for the past 31 years. It was started by my parents after the 1990 insurrection. A couple of years afterwards, the previous business went into receivership, and they had to start from zero. So hence the name Fresh Start. That is where it came from. And it started off as a small one-man operation. My dad, my mom, and one employee, and it grew and grew until we had to move out of the house and hire more staff and rent a property. It has grown from strength to strength without any real intervention over the last 31 years. We have reached to the stage now where we are a national brand and the product is distributed throughout the country.
Right.
We are growing into, or we have outgrown our current premises, and we are seeking to expand with getting out of not only the fruit juices, but looking towards more import substitution. We've recognized a number of products that we import a large amount from the United States and the rest of the world that we could produce right here at a much higher quality or comparable quality, and distribute regionally, locally, regionally, and potentially into other extra-regional markets.
And so do you find yourself able to, you're attempting to replace some of the imports. Do you find yourself, and when I say yourself, I mean the operations of your company, able to compete against some of I presume some of those foreign products are still on the market?
Definitely. I mean, it's still early days for some of the new products that we are starting to manufacture, but the response so far has been quite good, both locally and Ramesh mentioned, we just came back from the mission on the seas, and one of the comments that we got, which was very encouraging from a potential distributor in Puerto Rico, is that the quality of manufactured goods in the food and beverage sector, especially coming from Trinidad and Tobago, is, you know, world class. So they came down on their own and started looking at products from that are manufactured here, because there's opportunity to enter the Puerto Rican market, and they are very, very interested and impressed by what we have to offer. And that is very heartening coming from a small manufacturer in Trinidad, knowing that we could compete with the big guns, because the majority of their products come from the continental US.
Yeah.
So,
Because from my own experience, I go in the central market quite frequently, and I find that there is lacking the kind of variety of fruits and the quantity of fruits that, for instance, I experienced growing up as a little boy. You had fruits everywhere, including on the neighbor's tree, and so on and so on. What of the availability of the fruits, the base product from which you produce your juices?
Tony, you're absolutely correct. There's a major deficit in local fruit production. It's something we've been encouraging considerably over the years. We encourage farmers to grow passion fruit. We would buy out everything that they can produce. Currently, we buy all our limes are locally produced limes. As much as we can buy once it's in season, we would process it and store it for a longer term. We actually export some of our lime juice extracts to countries within the region. And
maybe you fellas are buying out all the limes when I go in the market.
That's why limes are $3 when you go.
Foreign hard limes and no local limes. It's selling for $4 for one and all kind of crazy thing.
Yeah, no, sometimes we have to pay those prices too. So it's not just you, you know, but we have to, when limes come in, you know, it's for a very short period. So we have to buy as much as we can at that point in time. But for other citrus products, we have to import, because there's a sufficient production in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, we used to have significant orange and grapefruit production when Carney was in operation, but those fields are no longer producing, you know, significantly. And the majority of our produce comes regionally from Belize. But even the larger players, they have to import from all over the world, because there's not sufficient. And then globally, there's been a reduction in supply of orange juice concentrate. So orange juice concentrate is one of those commodities that's traded on the futures exchange. And the price has just been climbing since 2020. It's only now stabilized a little bit, but it has not come down significantly.
So what can the government do? And anybody who can answer, please do, to encourage the kind of agricultural production, local agricultural production. I know the former, what's his name, Senator Spence, argued all the time about the concreting of land in agricultural areas and so on. How do you entice people to go back into agriculture? Not the old agriculture, but modern agriculture, technologically suited out.
Tony, I will let Marcus have the first bite at this, but just to let you know, Dale had to jump off. He had something to go and take care of. Marcus, you want to have the first bite at this, and I can jump in?
Sure. I think making lands accessible is probably the number one factor. There are a lot of people who are interested in getting into some level of agriculture, but they don't have the access to the arable land. And, you know, the Ministry of Agriculture has programs to help with it. They have the incentives, they have the subsidies that are still in place. Accessing it sometimes can be a bit onerous, but there are some programs that are available. The ADB also lends for the financing of projects such as these. But the level of agriculture that we need to move the needle is significant. And I remember there was the mega farm projects that never really took off. But in my
What has
opinion,
happened? What has happened to those farms?
well, one of them that I know of in Chagaramas that became the seed center, and what they do, they grow seeds, the seed bank. And I think that's actually a fantastic project, because what they were able to do is take the local varietals of things like okra and sorrel and hybridize them and create stock of seeds that are available to farmers at very good rates. So, there are certain levels of encouragement, but when it comes to the larger crops, the citrus and avocados, I think they have huge potential regionally for exports of those types of products. But it requires, again, significant intervention and will to make those things happen. Because a big problem is always pre-deal larceny. And I know, the pre-deal larceny department of the Ministry of Agriculture is understaffed. And, by the time you call them to come and help because you see people in your fields stealing all the orange, it's too late, We hear these stories all the time from farmers, why they can't supply when we are.
What of the Eastern Caribbean? In the old CARICOM planning, the Eastern Caribbean was supposed to produce the agricultural products, not exclusively, but surely, given the history of those islands, the capacity of farmers and so on, is that happening?
I can't say for certain exactly what is happening, but I know there were some projects on the processing side that were started up but mothballed. From conversations I've had with people within the region, is that the interest is there, but galvanizing the effort is really the problem.
Okay. Ramesh wanted to say something?
But Tony, two areas I want to touch on where agriculture is concerned. The holistic question you asked is how we could make it attractive, what we can do to attract new people into to agro-processing and agriculture. And let me say that agriculture and agro-processing is intricately linked with manufacturing, and we need the agricultural sector to continue to blossom and grow. That will allow people like Marcus to have that input feeding into his manufacturing process. So it's not so far and different to the question on manufacturing. We need to make agriculture sexy. We need to make it appealing. We need to make it attractive. Maybe we need to offer things like guaranteed pricing for some of these people who engage in manufacturing. So whether there's significant fluctuation, when there are times of oversupply, or when there's shortages, price, you can get some guaranteed pricing, some mechanism like that. But Marcus touched on a key point. You see, you can't try to make agriculture appealing and sexy and want to attract people to go into it if you're not facilitating the needs of the farmers in terms of pre-deal larceny issues, in terms of agricultural roads, in terms of putting all these mechanisms in place to the pre-deal larceny squad, Tony, from what I've been told, I mean, I can't verify the fact, has been reduced to almost nothing. You have a token person here, a token person there, engaging the process. We really and truly need to look at agriculture in a way that it becomes a feedstock into the manufacturing sector. But more importantly as well, we need to look at it from the context of feeding ourselves. We may not be looking at it like that. And it ought not to be just Trinidad and Tobago alone. You're talking about looking at it from a pan-Caribbean perspective, and maybe that's how we need to look at it. The Eastern Caribbean, they may have some pockets of areas that they could do grown vegetables, but the real area, the real landmass is Guyana, is Suriname, is Belize. These are the countries that we really need to look at. And then when we start to have this discussion with these kind of countries, there's no reason why we shouldn't be bringing in all the tomatoes and all these things from Guyana. But we can't, because the framework that we operate under with the CARICOM rules, we're not even removing the obstacle to trade. There's something called sanitary and phytosanitary measures. We need to have some serious discussion around those things that will allow us to bring agricultural products from these countries. But we operating in an antiquated framework that speaks to fly disease and vegetables that existed some 40, 50 years ago, foot and mouth disease. That is why we can't bring beef and this all these kind of meats from some countries within the Caribbean region. But yet when we go to these countries, we eat any food, and we really and truly need to look at this thing holistically, Tony, and
They're
seriously.
more like non-tariff barriers.
There are non-tariff barriers, but these are the conversations that we really need to have when we're talking about making CARICOM work, deepening the process of CARICOM. When our forefathers in 19th century created CARICOM, and then the Grand Anne's Declaration in 1989 to introduce the CSME. These are the things that we were talking about, to have the free circulation of goods, to have contingent rights in place, to have free movement of people, to have the ability to trade without tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So holistically, we really need to get this thing working optimally. Yes, the governments have been talking about 25 by 25 and these kind of things, but I firmly believe in the region, we really and truly need to have the agricultural sector. And COVID tells us that when COVID came, the rest of the world shut us off. We weren't getting supplies as we would readily want in this part of the world. Thankfully, COVID didn't last too long. If it had gone on for 4 or 5 years, we would have had some serious food shortage because we just don't produce enough to feed the 7 million English-speaking Caribbean people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, talking about Guyana and Suriname, you have the reality, I'm not knocking it, but you have the reality now of hydrocarbon discoveries.
Right, and I hope, Tony, they don't
how is
follow the
agriculture
same.
going to compete against those industries?
Right, and I hope they don't follow the same path of the Dutch disease that we followed in Trinidad and Tobago, because we speak about diversification day in and day out, but it only becomes prominent when the price of the energy sector is deflated. When the price of energy goes up, nobody looking at alternative form of energy, nobody looking at solar, nobody looking at that, because the energy sector buffers the rest of the economy. Thankfully, the manufacturing sector is able to hold its own and didn't fall away by the wayside. And we are able to, as my president previously said, offer some level of buffer given the shortfalls in the energy sector now. But generally, you're finding countries that have significant oil and gas and fossil fuel, they tend to have a monotype type of economy. We need to learn from these mistakes that people have made in the past. And I would hope that Guyana would use the largesses and the returns from the energy sector to build other, because we in Trinidad need a strong Guyana. We need a strong Jamaica, and Jamaica need a strong Trinidad, because we are the purchasing power of the Caribbean. Jamaica is the purchasing power of the Caribbean, and rising tides raise all ship. If Guyana does well, Trinidad will do well, and Barbados will do well, and Jamaica will do well. When the OECS countries attract tourists, whose goods the tourists consume? So we want them to do well in the tourist sector. And that's how we need to look at it.
It is certain that the agro-industrial sector has to grow, because if you're going to increase your production of raw materials, you can't throw them away the following morning when they spoil. You scan the market. But let me we're coming to the end of the program, and I want to give each of you a minute to make your last statement of what you think are some of the most important things that we have to do in terms of manufacturing. You're on the screen, so let's take you first.
Marcus,
sorry.
I think ease of doing business is one of the most important things when it comes to manufacturing. We have a lot of things as manufacturers to deal with on a daily basis, from dealing with the port to workers, to health and safety, ensuring that our environments are, the most optimal places for people to work. And when you have to, deal with some of the government agencies, with respect to just, maybe sometimes the Ministry of Health getting food badges or health certificates, sometimes these things could take longer than they really should. So having all of the critical services in place to make sure that we can carry out our business as smoothly as possible, to get to making things. That's what we do as manufacturers.
Okay, folks, one after the other.
Tony, I don't want to repeat what Marcus said, but I think it's very important about ease of doing business. So he touched on what is needed domestically. What I would say for manufacturers to have sustainability and growth in their operation is to look at the external market, look to diversify their market base in terms of the export base. So it will insulate us against things like what is happening right now in the United States. If one market is creating difficulties, we have a portfolio of markets to look at. So I will say that manufacturers need to diversify their portfolio in terms of their market destination to sell products to, as well as sourcing countries to get raw material from. Let's not put all our eggs in one basket. Let's engage in these missions, trade missions, and these things to find markets. And that will allow for them to sustain themselves in the ever-changing environment we have.
Dale Parson, president of the TTMA.
They'll step off, Tony. It's just two of us here.
Oh, he dropped off. Barry then? Who others?
No, Barry, but only Marcus and I are here.
All
Tony,
right.
the others dropped off.
Everybody else has left. We want to thank you very much because as we said at the start of it, the manufacturing sector, and as stated by the president, the manufacturing sector has a major responsibility now. If we don't have control, and the truth is we don't have control over prices and supplies and so on in the energy sector, we have some measure of control, at least to feed ourselves in terms of agricultural manufacturing and so on, and all of the conflict in the international trading system now. If we are able to do the basics, feed ourselves and export a part of the production, we should be able to, I don't know, I don't want to say take care of ourselves, that's a big say, but we should be able to do as best as we possibly can. So from Ramesh to all of the manufacturers who participated, we want to thank you very much for being part of the program. And you must remember this station now getting off the ground, and we can be part of the whole manufacturing thrust in terms of information going outside here. That's an unashamed ad for the station. Okay, Charles?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you very much to all the members of the Manufacturing Association for being on board. Really fantastic 2 hours that we just spent inside of the Drive Time Exchange. All right, and of course that will do for the Drive Time Exchange for this week, because Tony goes Monday to Thursday. So stay with us here on New Era TT Radio. Well, as the sun goes down, the DJs come up, so they take control of the evening. So I guess I'll talk with you tomorrow morning very early as we get up with our breakfast show. All right, so stay connected to New Era TT Radio.
It's we who gave the world the kind of carnival it knows today. You can get it now up in Notting Hill and in Brooklyn on Labor Day. But what we're producing in this place recently, it's rather amusing, but it's still productivity. We produce a man who take one ceremony and hide it in Panama. Then produce a man who produce a law saying we can't bring the man back here. So he all over the world having fun, cause he knows he cannot be caught. Cause before he leave, we produce the man with a diplomatic passport.